Ah yes, back to work on the Versatile again. It is getting... Who left that on the ground? It is getting a hydraulic pump. Well, I mean, it's already got one. I put it on. Got to get the old pump out here. Where did I stick it? It was around here somewhere. Oh, there it is. I'm dumb. Here's the old pump. Get over here to the workstation. Webster, I don't know what the model is. There was a number on here somewhere. I think it was down here. I got to clean it up a little more and get the number off of it. But this was a factory hydraulic pump. This is the one that sits on the transmission. And it lubricates the transmission. There's 3 pumps on this tractor, and we'll go over those in just a second if I remember. But this pump, you know, I don't know if you can tell in there, but it was getting a little bit worn. I don't know if there's like a brass or bronze wear plate in there that it was designed that way, or if the tolerance just started getting too loose and it just wasn't running right. But the old pump was not putting out any pressure, and so the transmission was not getting any lubrication. And I'll talk about how we figured that out here in a minute too, because I have to go under the tractor for that, and I only want to go under the tractor once. So what I'm doing right now, I'm getting ready to go back together. Like I said, pump's already on there, hoses are hooked up. Just getting the axle shaft, the axle drive shaft, the lower one for the front axle, cleaned up a little bit so it slides easier. And then I got some of the U-joint caps disassembled. I was gonna like clean them really good and then grease them again really good. And then I was looking at them and they weren't that dirty, and they're worn anyway. These are the main parts of the joints right here. There's one of them. I don't know if you can see that or not. Well, you can a little bit. That's not the worst one. This one's a good one, actually. The other one is the bad one. It's got a little bit of wear on it from the needles, because one of these, or 2 of these caps, all the needles aren't quite in there. But this thing will run a long time. As long as I keep grease in it, it'll run a long time before it quits. And we'll just keep that in mind. We'll get some new joints ordered, probably over the fall, winter, maybe next spring we'll get them in. But it's got to run through planting time, and it'll do that. So, yeah. And then, of course, obviously, to get to the transmission pump and take it out, I took the forward drive shaft off. But we'll go over that a little more detail here in just a second. For starters, let's talk about how many hydraulic pumps are on this tractor. You got the one underneath, of course, and then you have this one here for the steering. This one here, I believe, runs the hydraulic distributor, which is on the back of the tractor right here. We had that rebuilt. And then, you know, fancy new remote bar, custom, hillbilly, works a lot better than what they had on there before. And, of course, obviously, again, the third one is underneath, and that lubricates the transmission. So you've also got a lot of associated filters with that. We have replaced this pump, have not done anything with this. I'm thinking maybe next year we'll have to do this pump. And it looks very similar to the one that's underneath, but they are all different. Now, before I crawl under there and show you stuff, I just want to say something before I forget. I know I'm all over the place, but I'm trying to cover everything and also do it in a hurry, so bear with me. But before I forget, Helton Farm Repair in Wichita, Kansas, they had a couple of these on the shelf, and they sold us one about $550, which was not bad. And there is an updated pump. Those old Webster pumps, the guy there said that they don't make them anymore, obviously, but they don't sell kits for them or anything. So this would have to come apart, which shouldn't be too bad to do. I mean, you can see the lines where it comes together, but it would have to come apart and a kit made for it. I mean, the seals and stuff shouldn't be too hard to do. He said a hydraulic shop could probably put a kit together for this if the guts of it weren't too worn. But it's just a gear different pump. You can see the gears in there. I mean, it's a gear pump, but it's also gear driven. Sorry, I'm all over the place, trying to do too much at once. So Helton had one of these updated ones. You'll see it. It's blue. The flange is a little bit bigger. just in case you can't see it that well when I crawl underneath to show you. But it does mount up, just like the guy said. And Helton, if you need, if you have any questions about Versatiles, they know their stuff, especially on these older ones. Helton knows their stuff. Any of those guys there know what they're doing, know what they're talking about. So I'd give them a call. I'll put their website down below if anyone's interested. But I highly recommend them for versatile questions and versatile parts and stuff like that, because they know what they're doing. So now that I've covered all the bases I think I need to cover while I'm, not underneath the tractor, let's go underneath the tractor and have a gander at stuff. Got my special mat here, mind the differential, and apparently the wire that I probably should just cut. Yep, get laid down in here. All right. So, yes, I took this out. You don't have to. I just did because it's easier to get to the pump up there. And the big thing is when you take this shaft out, it's just like removing any other universal joint. But you've got to make sure that damn thing will collapse, because if it doesn't, you'll never get it out. You'll play hell trying to get it out. And I had to work it a little bit to get it to collapse enough. It would extend just fine, but to get it to collapse took a little bit of effort. So that's why I'm cleaning it up so it slides easier. Now, let me get in a little bit better position here. So, show you the pump. Well, kind of. It's not perfect, I know, but there's just 2 bolts that hold it in, the 3/8 bolts. And, of course, there's 2 lines. This is all new because this is the suction line. It runs bottom of the transmission all the way up to the pump. And the problem is with it is that if it's a factory line, it is exactly long enough for the factory pump and the factory fitting. And I've already tried swapping the factory fitting elbow on the top, and that did not work. And so I went and got a little bit of a couple pieces for extensions so I can make it all work. And it seems to do okay. Big thing you want to keep an eye out for if you do that. Right there, you've got that shift lever, or what attaches to the shift lever internally, just part of the linkage. You just want to make sure that's not going to hit the hose when you move it over, because it should be right in here if everything's factory. So keep that in mind. And then I went ahead and replaced this hose while I was in here, and it goes from the pump over to this copper line here. There's a ground cable or positive cable, I don't know which, but this goes to the transmission cooler, I believe. So you might be wondering why I didn't replace this big line here. And I mean, it's kind of obvious, but just in case, to pull this line off is, well, 1, a lot of work, and 2, I'd have to drain the transmission. It would drain the transmission that way if I pulled that line off, and I didn't really want to. So I just replaced this easier one right here, and the old one was not leaking. It just, if you're going to do this, you might as well go back in with new fittings and all that. And then the biggest thing I can think that will help you out is that if you remove this lever here, the lever's here, sorry, gosh. There's just a nut and washer on this. Just take that off. This is the parking brake. And take that off, get it out of the way. It makes it a lot easier to get up in here with extensions and work on all that. So, get a little bit better position here. Knock a bunch of dirt on me. There's that fill lever for the differential. Anyway, much better. So you might be wondering, well, can you just remove that parking brake, make it a little easier to get to stuff? And the answer is no. It looks like you can remove some of it, and I promise you cannot, because I removed as much as I could. And without pulling this rotor off, which is also part of that input yoke for the transmission, or this is an output yoke actually, because it's the lower. The input yoke's up there. It comes off the motor. But anyway, you have to pull this output yoke and all that stuff off and pull those bolts, and then do that you have to pull this caliper, and that's just a lot of hassle that is not worth messing with, in my opinion. So there is that. There's really removing this stubby lower drive shaft is about as much room as you're going to get and then pulling that lever. Now, in replacing the pump itself, and I did take some video yesterday, so I'll see if I can get like a screenshot or a short little clip I'll throw in right here. But the cavity that the pump sits in is just a cast iron cavity. And I don't know if it has like a dedicated seal in it, or if it's just a light oil seal, but it's just a cavity. So it's not like when you pull the pump out, you're exposing everything internal to the transmission. It's actually pretty good design there, in my opinion. So when you pull it off, if there's still some dirt that you don't get cleaned off around it, and you drop it into that cavity, no big deal. You can clean it out, and it's not going to go in the transmission and get all over the gears. And you may leak a little bit of hydraulic or transmission fluid when you pull this out, just because where the cavity's at, some oil will float through. And then there might also still be some oil in the pump, which, by the way, you'll want to oil this pump when you put it in. I just put a little bit of motor oil in because that's what I had. Just something to lubricate it until it can suck fluid up from the bottom of the transmission and all that. But, anyway, back to the point. Sorry, tangents. Bad about those. It's a cavity. When you pull it off, it's not a big deal. There's a really thin gasket that goes on there. The guy at Helton said to just tack it on there with a little sealer or RTV or something, just a little bit. He said you don't want so much it's going to squish when you put it on. And that gasket doesn't really need to work all that hard because of the way that cavity's set up and stuff like that. And then obviously when you put it in the same way the old one came out. You want the big line up top and you want the small line on the bottom. This should be suction and this should be pressure. Should be. We'll find out pretty quick. So with all that being said on installation, how do we know that the old pump was bad? Well, I said we pressure tested it, or I should have said that. But we pressure tested it to see how much pressure it was putting out, because right here is the pressure switch, and it is a switch. It's not a sensor. It doesn't read a specific pressure number. It just registers that there's pressure in the system or there's not. And if there's not, that's bad. So you can get those switches pretty much anywhere. They're just like a 2-pole, 1/8-inch pipe oil pressure switch. You can get them at Summit Racing, or I saw one at Jegs Aftermarket. They're kind of pricey, but you can still get them. And then you just have, ground wire and then a lead wire that goes up into the cab underneath the dash. And that's what makes that transmission pressure light turn on and off. The way it should work is that if everything's operating as it should, when you have let out on the clutch and the motor's running, and even if you're in neutral and this shaft is spinning, that pump should be moving, pushing fluid all over the transmission, lubricating stuff. That's how it should work. And if that light comes on, generally you push the clutch in, the light comes on. Well, that's because the transmission's not spinning, so the pump's not spinning, so it's not pushing any fluid. If you need to test the system, you pull this off, you put a pressure gauge on that will work for oil, and like I said, the hole is 1/8-inch pipe, at least on this tractor, and you put that in there and you register, or you look and see how much pressure it's putting out while the tractor is running. And I advise getting a gauge with a pretty long hose, so you don't have to crawl back under here to, look at that while the tractor's running. It's a little bit dangerous. But the guy at Helton said it should be putting out about 20 to 25 pounds of pressure. And, it really doesn't take much on a system like this. It's old enough. It really doesn't take much to lubricate the transmission. We've been running it on splash lubrication for a while because that light on the dash has been on for quite a bit. But we thought it was the lead wire, grounding out somewhere that it shouldn't, and that's what was causing the problem. And that was not causing the problem because I replaced it. It's a 16 gauge wire now. It used to be a 12 gauge green wire. Now it's a red wire, so it fits with the rest of the tractor, blends in. But yeah, when you need to test it, that's what you do. That's what it should be putting out. That's how we figured out the old pump was bad. Now that's a nice pretty blue pump and a red tractor. It's probably out of a later Ford Versatile, if I had to guess. I don't know. Maybe they just painted it blue because they were bored. Now, this pump, I took pictures of it. I've got numbers. I'm going to see if I can find the actual pump somewhere, and if I can, I'll put that information down below. If I can't, I'll try and get whatever I can. I know the brand of this one is Eaton. You know, same people that make transmissions and differentials. Oddly enough, Eaton made the differentials in this 800. But I'll see if I can get a link or something where you can get these if you live several states away and you don't want to go to Helton Farm Repair. But, you know, that's up to you. I'll do my research and see what I can find. So that's, it's hard to hold my arms up for that long. So that's pretty much the gist of it. I mean, it's not a complicated repair. There's just some details and stuff that needs to be gone over. It's not perfect amount of room to work in here, but you know, you can get enough to get in here and get stuff done. It comes on and off a certain way. You know, it's kind of a pain to get your wrenches in, and if it's old and stuff and it's leaked a lot or you overfilled the transmission a bunch, there's going to be oil and stuff everywhere. I mean, everything under here is dirty. So get yourself a bar of lava soap and be prepared to take a bath, because you're going to need one by the time you get done. So, yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. So, now that the sun has decided to come out and the wind's decided to pick up, which I'm glad for the wind. It was getting pretty hot today, pretty humid. So, with all that done and all that on there, as I said, the last thing to do is just to get this stubby drive shaft cleaned up where it'll collapse in enough that I can put everything back together, and I'll put the U-joints back in it and put it on, tighten her down, should be good to go. Alright, so quick addendum, because well, it's hot and the phone likes to get overheated, so I don't have a lot of time. But the tractor is fine, everything's running good. Quick note on the pump, the old pump was not bad. And the reason why is because the transmission was low on fluid, because I did not realize that. Okay, so right back there's the level plug for the transmission. What I did not realize is that in here by the filler neck, let's see if we can get to it one-handed. I gotta climb up here. But the transmission's its own separate system, and the filler neck for it is a twist cotter pin around the right way. The filler neck and the breather tube for it is right there, that little red dude. And then of course down in through there you can see that nice and shiny brand new focus camera. You can see the brand new nice and shiny blue hydraulic pump, which is working fine, and the old one probably was too. It's just like I said, transmission was low on fluid to about the tune of 4 gallons. So we put 4 gallons of that stuff in, whatever, that's what Tractor Supply had. And we put that in, and lo and behold, the light goes off and it all works fine. So that, yeah, that is a severe lapse of judgment on my part, because I'm supposed to be mostly in charge of the maintenance around here, and boy did I screw up. And then, like I said, the level plug's back here, and I did not realize that the transmission is its own separate system. It's not tied to the hydraulic and implement system. It's its own filter and all that. So we filled it up. It's working fine. And, you know, it's listed in the manual about how all this works. It's just, it's been a few years since I read the manual, and to be honest with you, I probably skimmed over that section when I read it the first time. So, yeah, crisis averted, barely. Whoever built the transmission and designed it did a good job, because it's been running low for a year now, and the training has not caused us any real problems, so that's good. But yeah, that would have been very, very bad. And I'm standing in the shade so the phone doesn't get hot, by the way. But that's a bit of bad information on why the pump was bad. Pump wasn't actually bad, so now we got 2. And all the other information I gave about replacing the hydraulic pump and Helton and all that stuff, that's all accurate. Just the reason why is because of the most basic thing. So, public service announcement. Remember to do your maintenance correctly. Read your manual. It's, you know, everybody screws up and has lapses in judgment. Don't let it cost you several $1,000s in a transmission repair. we got lucky this time. I don't know that we would get so lucky next time. That's why we've gotta pay attention. So yeah. Now before we go, I'll show you what the book says, just in case what I've mentioned here is not clear, and then we'll go ahead and end it. All right, so in the Versatile Owner's Manual, as we can see, the implement and steering system is its own thing with the big hydraulic tank, and that's how all that's connected. And then we go over here to the transmission, and it's its own system. And I should have been looking at this, because I would have realized, if I looked at this before I started that hydraulic pump replacement, before we even went and got it, I would have realized that there is a breather and filler plug right up there, oil level plug right down there. And then, yeah, there's that pressure line, that small one that I replaced. So the switch comes after the fluid has been filtered. And, you know, when you actually put fluid in the transmission, it works like it should. Who would have guessed? So, again, crisis averted. We got lucky. It's got a lot of work to do, a lot of field. There's more field on the other side of that bottom. There's trees are all big cottonwoods in that bottom there. And there's a lot of field on the other side to work. So, you know, the tractor's got its work cut out for it, but this would have been very bad if we had not fixed it now. So yeah, everything is working good now. Just got to get air conditioning in it. That'll be its own video. I'm working on putting that together. Hopefully it'll be uploadable, but that'll be a little bit. So that concludes this repair on the Versatile, which, if I'd been paying attention, I shouldn't have had to make. So you guys should learn from my mistakes and not make the same mistakes. Anyway, now we're done. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. You give Helton Farm Repair a call if you got any Versatile questions. They know their stuff. They will help you out. And I'm going to get back to work. We'll just catch you guys in the next one. See ya.